Hi everyone, and welcome back to this channel devoted to the law, to the experts in law, compliance, and technology. My name is Tony, and I'm sure that the audience that will watch this video is interested in some specific areas of business, of the IT industries, and one of them is definitely gaming and betting. And if you are doing this, then probably you would think about how exactly you can work with Brazilian audience, which is a huge, big audience. And today we're going to talk about this here in São Paulo in the office of the law firm called Montgomery with Neil Montgomery, the founder of the law firm, and they are specifically working with gaming, betting industries in Brazil and in Latin America. Hi, Neil.
Hello, Tony. Welcome.
Tell me, first of all, I'm sure that people would like to know more about you because obviously your name sounds like you're English, but at the same time you're in Brazil, and if you speak perfect Portuguese. So can you talk about yourself a bit?
Sure, Tony. Despite my Anglo-Saxon name, Neil Montgomery, I am Brazilian born. I was born in Rio de Janeiro. My father is Scottish. My mother was Brazilian. I'm also a dual national. I also have British nationality as well. I've been around many places. I've lived in many places in Brazil and in the world as well. So besides Rio, where I was born, Santos and Porto Alegre in Brazil, besides São Paulo nowadays as well, and overseas in places like Solihull in England, Aberdeen, Scotland, and Lima, Peru.
Nice. This represents basically how the international business works. So why we decided to talk about Brazil is because Brazil has a huge population. It's like what,
220 million,
almost like the U.S. A bit smaller, but still something comparable. And we know from our clients, for example, that they are all the time asking questions about Brazil, about how to identify Brazilians for different purposes. And obviously, one of them is gaming, iGaming, betting. Brazilians are crazy about sports. At the same time, Brazil right now is in process of getting more regulation of gaming, iGaming, and betting.
Brazilians would like to go to places like Punta del Este, Las Vegas, other places where there were physical casinos, and also the cruise industry as well. Yeah. One of the attractions is having a casino on board the ships as well when they're in international waters. But then came along online gaming, and of course Brazil is one of the main markets for the industry. For many years we haven't had any regulation, quite to the contrary. We have had a general ban on gaming in general, gaming and betting in general, for more than 80 years. Then came 2018 in the Temer administration, after President Dilma was impeached. We had the law 13,756 enacted, which was a major breakthrough because it legalized fixed odds sports betting in a law that was allocated to the lottery and how the proceeds from the lottery would be distributed between several governmental bodies. And that was the way the Brazilian Congress found to at least legalize the first vertical of gaming. Probably it makes sense because, as we said, Brazilians are passionate for sports. So sports betting was the first vertical to be legalized, and that happened in 2018. However, the law said that the Brazilian government, the federal government, had up to 4 years to provide the regulations on the 2018 law. During the Bolsonaro administration, year after year, we waited for the regulations and nothing happened. So Bolsonaro, unfortunately, didn't win the election and Lula came to power, but it was Lula's administration that in 1 year managed to work with Congress to get the law 14,790 approved at the very end of 2023, which further regulated sports betting, fixed odds sports betting, and very courageously also legalized online gaming, iGaming. It does have to be supported by additional regulations, which are called in Portuguese portarias, in English ordinances, which are issued by the Ministry of Finance, specifically by a specific body that was created, which is the SPA, which is the acronym for the Prizes and Betting Secretariat of the Ministry of Finance. So a total of 11 or 12 ordinances are planned. Only 4 have yet been issued. The last one issued number 827, rolls out the federal licensing process.
So, and I know that one of those that will be published will also be AML compliance,
Correct.
responsible gaming, taxation. I think it's also...
No, tax has already been resolved.
Okay, resolved.
Bettors will have to pay only once a year and only over the net winnings. It will be a 15% rate of whatever exceeds the exemption threshold, calculated once a year, tax payable once a year. What needs to be defined is exactly what the operators will provide the bettors with. Normally here in Brazil, in order for you to put together your income tax return once a year, you receive from every payment source what we call in Portuguese an informe de rendimento.
Yes.
It's like a report where all the amounts paid to that specific taxpayer are indicated. So probably the operators will have to produce some sort of similar document setting out what the winnings were, what the losses were, and therefore each operator will be able to show the bettor what the net winnings in the year will be, so that the 15% can be applied over whatever exceeds the exemption threshold of the net winnings.
So it seems like a lot of paperwork.
Probably, but Brazil is very digital. So nowadays our income tax returns are done all online. The Federal Revenue Service even provides taxpayers the option of a pre-filled income tax return. You have many choices. Either you do it from scratch, or you see what the government has already completed, and whether if you think everything's okay, then you can make certain adjustments or file what the government has completed. But nowadays it's of course it's good work for accountants, right?
Yes.
That's when they work the most during the year. But I, for example, I've done my income taxes now for decades by myself. It's quite easy to do here in Brazil.
I have an accountant for that. What about the requirements that are put inside the law for the gaming operators?
Yes.
So what is?
Well, there is going to be a lot of compliance, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of information and documentation will have to be put together and filed with the Ministry of Finance. The date that has been set in this latest ordinance is that in order for you to get a license on the 31st of December of this year, 2024, and the good thing is that the Ministry of Finance will be issuing all licenses simultaneously. So there's not going to be anybody ahead of the pack of those who have been licensed. All the licenses, if approved, will be issued together on the 31st December, so that as from the 1st of January 2025, the operators can start their operations in a regulated market.
Is it still possible to apply for a license?
Yes, well, the cutoff date may be the 31st of December. However, in order for you to ensure your license on that date, you have to file your application online by the 20th of August. So that is under 2 months to go.
Oh my God.
That's why, so at one stage, when the law was enacted at the end of last year, there was a big surprise for many and a potential barrier for the entrance of foreign operators, in the sense that the law contemplated a minimum Brazilian ownership of 20% of the local operator. And so my recommendation has always been to my clients, which are all foreign operators, to set up a two-tier corporate structure in Brazil. And you would never need a third party in this structure. Therefore, the foreign operator would open first a local holding company, 100% owned by the foreign shareholder, right? That Brazilian holding company as a Brazilian company, because
Sets up another company
because it was incorporated in Brazil, has its head offices in Brazil and its management in Brazil, and that company would incorporate a wholly owned subsidiary.
This is exclusive content right now is happening, so I hope everyone is writing down. How long will it take really to prepare the documentation?
Okay. Well, many
and the companies, etc.
Okay, many operators have gone ahead and already set up at least one company, and now of course we have a tight deadline because 20th of August is just around the corner. First of all, a foreign shareholder of a Brazilian company needs to appoint a local proxy, a local attorney in fact, to hold a very broad power of attorney to represent the foreign shareholder vis-a-vis the local company and third parties and authorities in Brazil. And that requires, therefore, for the power of attorney to be notarized overseas, apostilled, and then when it arrives in Brazil, any parts that are not in Portuguese need to be translated into Portuguese by a local certified translator, registered with a notary public, registered with the commercial registry, together with the incorporation documents as well. So it takes more or less, I would give it at least 20 to 30 days to incorporate the first company. The second will be easier because you're already working for a local company.
Yeah.
And of course, being a gaming company, you have additional scrutiny and KYC to do.
Yeah.
So it takes more time. So for those who already have their companies, it has been, let's say, now they're in a better position to stick to the deadline. But for those who don't yet have, it's going to be very difficult. But the licensing process is going to be permanently open. However, for those who do not hold a license on the 1st of January, they will be considered to be in the black market. And therefore, they will potentially suffer the restrictions that the law imposes of in terms of publicity, advertising, and payments as well. Because only licensed operators will be able to continue to advertise in Brazil and to use the payment system in Brazil. One curious thing, I think, Tony, which is worth mentioning, we're talking about the federal licensing system. However, even before that was available, because of a 2020 decision from the Brazilian Supreme Court, which declared that the federal government didn't have a monopoly over lotteries in Brazil, this gave an opportunity to states and also municipalities to set up their own state lotteries. And you may remember when I mentioned the 2018 law, fixed odds sports betting was at that moment approved as a type of lottery. And therefore I was again the first lawyer in Brazil when this decision came out to say that, look, states, there's a big opportunity here because besides being able to exploit traditional lotteries, you could also license fixed odds sports betting.
Right.
And so this has been very advantageous, issued their licenses, and nowadays we even have states like the state of Rio de Janeiro, where you have Loterge as the regulator, where many companies have been interested in applying for a state law license. And the special thing about Rio de Janeiro is that in the law that was approved in 2023, Rio de Janeiro was the only state in the federation, we have 26 states and a federal district, to benefit from a specific article in the law which says that for any tenders issued before the date of a provisional measure issued last year, which together with a bill of law culminated in the law that was approved, they would have like an acquired right. And the president of Loterge, who's also a lawyer, a guy called Cleber Cansado, he was very innovative, very creative, and he changed the contents of the original tender to allow that operators licensed by the state of Rio de Janeiro could accept bets, not only within the territorial borders of the state, but from outside of the borders of the state of Rio de Janeiro. And that makes the Rio license extremely attractive for three reasons. First of all, it has national coverage, which other states cannot provide because their tenders came out after the cutoff date. Yes. Second, at federal level, besides the normal federal taxes that companies pay, operators will have to pay what we call a 12% GGR tax. At the state level in Rio de Janeiro, that 12% is much lower. It's only 5%. And at federal level, you also have a monthly inspection fee, which doesn't exist at state level. In addition to that, you have much less compliance and bureaucracy, and you don't need the two-tier structure that you need at federal level. You only need one company because the legislation in Rio does not require you to have, for example, the 20% ownership. So many operators have been interested in this license.
And what about the amount of the licensing fee?
It's much less. So at federal level, we mentioned it's 30 million reais, also for 5 years, and
just $6 million.
$6 million. A bit less because the real devalued recently, but let's round it up to $6 billion. At state level, we're also talking about a 5-year license. but only 5 million reais, so $1 million.
You see the difference. So wow, and I mean, will it work?
That's the big question, because there is ongoing litigation at the moment, of course. Other states have complained, and the federal government as well has not looked to Rio very positively. They've already notified Rio to stop doing that because, in their view, it goes against the federal law that was approved at the end of last year. However, the Rio de Janeiro state lottery, Loterge, is quite adamant that they have the legal support to do that. And so more than 13 companies have now applied. They have recently extended the window to apply for a license. I'll be next week in Rio representing a client who has applied for the license. And things in Brazil take time, especially when we're talking about judicial proceedings. So it may be that things stretch out, and you never know. Maybe they'll still be fighting 5 years to come, and you'll have been granted a license if you satisfied all the requirements. You could have a much cheaper license for the same 5-year period with much a simpler structure and less cost.
But do you really believe in land-based casinos? I think that it seems that the volume of iGaming is so large, and it's growing, that probably the land-based casinos, unless it's like Las Vegas, for example, it's just like a tourist attraction, and you always go there because it's just like something that it's just interesting experience to go to Las Vegas. Otherwise,
well, I think the purpose here in Brazil is to prove casinos as integrated casino resort, and there's a limitation on the number of casinos per state. So it goes from 1 to 3. There are certain exceptions like river casinos or casinos in tourist centers. But on the general rule is that depending on the size, the population of a state, you can have 1, 2, or 3 land-based casinos. São Paulo, being the largest state in terms of population, can have the maximum of 3. Rio, I believe it's 2. But there is a big appetite for land-based casinos because, of course, gaming is liked by all generations, and you have the younger generations are more digital, but the older generations are more analog, right? And when we had the bingos during one of the first Lula administrations, they were very popular. There are still some bingos around, probably operating based on injunctive relief that they have obtained, because bingos are prohibited as well. But Brazilians like the land-based. I myself, I like to go into a casino.
One of the concerns that people who are thinking about entering Brazil is that, okay, we will enter there, we will put our leg there, and then our foot there, and then it gets stuck there because like the economy is very close, is very secluded. For example, okay, you earn money on your bank account. Suppose that you can open a bank account there. How you will take the money out of Brazil? It's not an easy task, I guess.
It actually, we're not Venezuela, for example. So we are a country where, while the inflow and outflow of capital is controlled only in terms of, let's say, for statistical purposes, the central bank, for example, when you do a foreign investment in Brazil, you need to register that with the central bank. But the beauty of Brazil, and we are one of the very few countries that still has this benefit, is that dividend payments are not subject to withholding income tax in Brazil.
Oh, that's very nice.
That's very nice. So there's a lot of tax in Brazil, but one of the few, if not the only remittance abroad that has a 0% withholding tax is dividend payments. And that is regardless of where the recipient of that dividend payment is located. We have, of course, many tax havens blacklisted by Brazil. And coincidentally, many of the traditional gaming licensing jurisdictions are also tax havens. So potentially, if we were talking about any other form of remittance to those jurisdictions, there would be additional, withholding and additional surtaxes. But in terms of dividend payments, it's 0%. And we do have, as you said, several double tax treaties as well, which we can benefit from. So the most tax optimal way of remitting money back to overseas, if you're a foreign operator, is of course generating the necessary profits in Brazil to have dividend payments being made available and making those through the official channels. They won't be subject to any withholding income tax because income tax would already have been paid within the company making the dividend payment.
And your opinion, how many foreign gaming businesses are now in the process of getting the licenses?
Well, last year, before the law came out, there was an ordinance numbered 1,330 that was issued by the government, inviting companies interested in applying for a license in the future, a federal license, to file what they called an expression of interest. At the time, a promise was made that for those who did file their expression of interest, they would benefit from a more fast-track processing of the application when licenses were made available. At that time, back in November 2023, 134 companies filed their expression of interest. So that was already a significant amount of companies interested. I believe we went over with a client, and our checklist has anywhere between 20 and 30 pages of requirements. So there's a lot of stuff to go through. I don't believe that we'll see hundreds or thousands of applications, but at least within 100, I believe it could be possible. But then, of course, the problem will be with the Ministry of Finance to have sufficient people to process all these applications and to stick to the deadlines as well, right?
So they will need to hire a lot of people.
They have restructured internally, and they have fitted most of their positions. I believe they have somewhere close to 40 positions already occupied within the Ministry of Finance, dedicated specifically to gaming and betting, but they will have to be efficient. For the time being, after Ordinance 827 was issued, we have only had one applicant so far.
What about betting or gaming in crypto? Cryptocurrencies is a very popular instrument to be used in different gaming businesses, but mostly because this creates an opportunity to work with audiences on the black market. But will it be potentially possible to use cryptocurrencies?
No, unfortunately, the law defines what type of payment methods will be allowed, and they're always going to be, let's say, at-site payments. So either prepaid cards or debit cards or PIX, of course, which is the most used method of payment.
It's a national system of payments, and everyone has an account there usually. So it's like everyone.
Not everyone, but like, most people have PIX.
Like diaristas. So everyone who works like
even if you don't have a bank account, you can have a PIX.
It's fantastic. Basically, it's you can go for a tourist trail somewhere and buy a cocoa nut with a PIX on the mountain.
So, for example, credit cards and cash payments are going to be banned as well. So those and boletos as well, which is another form of payment. And so, but crypto isn't contemplated as one of the methods of payment.
And I had also a question about the directors, the officers of the company.
Okay.
Usually, most of the people think, in Brazil probably they will require a local director or something like that.
Yes, you do have, for many of there are certain mandatory positions that need to be directors. And those, most of them will have to be resident. Not necessarily they have to be Brazilian. They can be foreigners holding their respective visa to hold the position, but most of them require residency in Brazil.
Residency meaning the card. They
have to have. If you're Brazilian, you have to have a local CPF and identity card. Now, if you're a foreigner, you have to have the residence visa that will allow you to have a CPF and be able to live here.
CPF is basically the tax number that everyone has, even the foreigners.
Correct, because there are two types: the resident and non-resident CPFs. Yes,
and you can actually open it even outside of Brazil.
Correct. Yes.
But it's an interesting system. In terms of specific requirements, one of them, I remember I've been to at Sigma here in São Paulo last year, and André Gelfi was there speaking about responsible gaming.
Correct.
He is the director of the Institute of Responsible Gaming, and also director at Betson, I think.
Correct.
Would love to have
And a good friend as well. A good friend.
And he was talking about responsible gaming. That it's very important to set up this policies, etc., etc. But when we talked just one-on-one, he was quite pessimistic about the way how things are going, because it seems that, I mean, there are different strategies in different countries. What do you think would be with Brazil?
Well, Brazil wants to get it right, and I think there has been a delay in issuing the legislation and the regulations, because since it has been a big taboo in Brazil, we had the near eight-decade prohibition. I think those who really fought for legalization wanted to do it 100% correct. And of course, responsible gaming is one of the pillars of gaming and betting in order for it to be successful. Because of course, it could only be for over 18s. We don't want minors playing in games of chance. And so the legislation already includes provisions regarding responsible gaming. As you said, there is an ordinance to be issued as well on responsible gaming. CONAR, which is the advertising watchdog in Brazil, that already has as members several operators, probably who either have already applied or will be applying for a license. They also earlier this year issued a so-called Annex 10 dedicated specifically to the gaming and betting industry, providing the guidelines of what advertising campaigns should contain. So there's a lot of care being taken in terms of responsible gaming. I think we will also have the ability of self-exclusion. The list, the bill of law, which aims to legalize the land-based casinos, also includes the possibility of a national list of addicted players being issued to curb addiction in gaming. So hopefully there will be the legal tools to try and make gambling even more responsible. But I think it's up to the players as well to take care of themselves as well a little bit.
It's even us, Sumsub, we're actually offering one of the tools, which is like transaction monitoring, and the idea is basically to analyze odd patterns in the in transactions. And so if, for example, the person is making a lot of large bets, yes, and loses all the time, that can be like like a red flag or something like that.
I think when we have the legalization of the land-based casinos, and as I said, I think that will happen and it may happen this year still, then we will also attract the US attention as well, because then we have the Las Vegas super operators. Many of them are clients of our firm already, and they have a big interest in Brazil.
The problem is that in the end of this year, the providers who will get the license, they will continue to work. They're, I guess, already working on the market. So, but they have only the time until the end of the year. Those that will not get the license, what will happen with them? So they will be blocked.
Well, until the 31st of December, there are legal arguments to sustain that operators based in jurisdictions where gaming is authorized and have obtained a license and their servers are overseas would not be committing any unlawful activities within the Brazilian market. And that was the prevalent legal position because there were no licenses available. From the moment you start making licenses available, then of course that argument doesn't exist. And so the cutoff date for foreign operators to operate in Brazil from overseas will be the end of the year. Then we have the federal licenses will have been granted. We also have many state licenses already available. So as from the 1st of January, if you are not a license holder, you could be in big problem. Probably more from a practical perspective in terms of your customers not being able probably to make payments or receive payments. You won't be able to advertise as well. So the whole question is how much channelization there will be to the regulated market as from the 1st of January or not. The government has said publicly that once the licenses have been rolled out, that they will no longer be lenient and will be taken enforcement actions against black market operators. Exactly what that means, we're still to see, but I believe they do have to do something because operators will have spent a lot of money in getting a Brazilian license. It's one of the most expensive in the world, and so they need their investment to be protected. So the federal government needs to also enforce whatever tools they have from a legal perspective to protect those operators that have sought a license.
So basically they can just block the websites on the territory.
That is possible, and the legislation does contemplate that. And even before the law was enacted at the end of last year, we did have at least one precedent where a foreign website was blocked, and it now has been unblocked. But that could be a possibility. But again, it's public information, right? So last year, there was a decision issued by the courts here in São Paulo to block the Blaze website. But the Blaze website has now been unblocked as well. But it was a precedent even before the law. Now the law also provides law enforcement agents to be able to apply for the blocking of websites as well. So you could have blocking of payments, restrictions on advertising, so there could be many restrictions if you're in the black market.
The fact that usually the gaming market is based on three pillars, which is the affiliates providers, the platforms that kind of like sell in the software instead of being a provider of the game. And then the gaming operators who can basically, and the thing is that obviously in most cases, the real player is the platform, is not the specific provider and specific operator. So you can block one operator, it will pop up next day on another website. So
yeah, there are mirror websites. There are, let's say, satellite websites. So there are potentially technological ways of circumventing, but we'll have to wait and see. But apparently there are going to be so many restrictions that it's going to be much difficult for the Brazilian players as well to be playing on let's say, black market websites.
Well, in the end of this interview, which is going to the end, obviously, right now, I would like maybe to ask you to give some maybe common sense advice for possible operators who would like to enter Brazilian market, like what to think about and what to start with, etc., if they want to enter. In this specific point of time, when we are in June of the year, which is the last year without licenses.
Well, as I said, you need to establish a local presence in Brazil, setting up your corporate structure. You need to find people that are trustworthy to act, for example, as the local proxy of the foreign shareholder. You need to protect your IP rights as well, so registering the trademarks. And it's important to mention that licensed operators in Brazil will be granted a specific domain, .bet.br. So Brazilian players, Brazilian customers will be able to recognize who is licensed and who isn't, at least at federal level, because of the domain .bet.br. But it's also important to protect that IP, the other trademarks you may have, and have a good data. Data is the king of everything. So data in Brazil, because all the offshore operators, the data currently in relation to their Brazilian customers is located overseas. So there's also a big question of how to transfer that data to Brazil. Will it be possible to transfer automatically? Would you have to start from scratch? Brazil does have data protection laws where consent is required from the data subject, from the customers.
And data should be in Brazil.
It should be in Brazil. And it's important that the data centers need to be in Brazil. There's only one exception, that data centers can be located outside of Brazil if Brazil has entered into international cooperation treaties in civil and criminal matters with such foreign country. And in our research, we identified that there are no countries at the moment having international cooperation treaties addressing both civil and criminal matters at the same time. There are 4 countries where treaties cooperation treaties do exist separately on civil and criminal matters. Those would be China, France, Italy, and Spain. And so I have submitted a question to the ministry as well for them to release what would be the official list that they would consider as countries which have this international cooperation treaty, because it is in the legislation, but I think we need more clarity from the Ministry of Finance as well as to which countries, if any, can locate data centers outside of Brazil.
Yeah, data localization is a huge thing right now, and it becomes more and more complicated for global companies to work everywhere because most of the countries require data localization. Thank you very much, Neil, for this
Thank you very much.
I would recommend the audience to follow Neil's profile on LinkedIn.
We're very active on LinkedIn. Yes.
Yeah, he has a very interesting, very informative, I would say, blog on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your attention, and put, if possible, a like under this video and subscribe. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
And I expect you in Brazil. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.